11?
You're just gonna leave that?
What? Yeah, I am.
Well, there you go.
11, yeah.
Everyone can know.
11. We're at 11.
We're
Yeah,
at 11.
Freaking 11.
Episode 11.
So for this series, I'm going to be snuggled over here, slightly dying because my nose just started dripping. Chris is dying because it smells bad. Tyler is grinning because he farted. So welcome to
Wow.
our podcast. I hope you guys like the mess.
Just got outed.
It's quite the opening.
Straight slaughter right here.
But for the next 3 episodes, we are planning to share with you guys some of our favorite Bible passages. Today, first up is Tyler Page, and he would like to share with you guys a little bit about the Bible and a little bit why he likes that passage in particular. Tyler Page, ladies and gentlemen.
Also, no, Sam didn't listen to me when I gave him the passage multiple times, but it's okay.
You can introduce the passage.
I will, yes, that's fine. Don't worry.
But do you know what it is?
I need a tissue.
Thanks. So this is one of my all-time favorite passages. But I'm going to look at it from kind of like a new angle that I haven't looked at in the past. I think it'll just be like interesting for me personally, but also it like brings new meaning to it. It's like another layer. So Chris and I were talking about this for a while, kind of frustratedly, as we were both pretty wiped, trying to figure out what the heck to write on. But so I'm doing my passage on Peter's denial, which is a weird passage to like. I don't know. Like most people are like the 2 Corinthians passage about love, right? Are like those like really pinnacle passages.
This you could probably do a whole sermon series just on this story.
Yeah, it's also like long. And as Chris and I were talking about this, we cut so much because I was getting a little carried away, which I tend to do. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I'll just jump in and read it. And then I'll kind of break it down. And then I have a couple of small passages to kind of add another layer to it. All right, so it's Matthew 26. We're going to start in verse 69. While Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, a servant girl came up to him and said, "You were with Jesus from Galilee." But in front of everyone, Peter said, "That isn't so. I don't know what you're talking about." When Peter had gone out of the gate, another servant girl saw him and said to some people there, "This man was with Jesus from Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it. And this time he swore, "I don't know the man." A little while later, some people were standing there, walked over to Peter and said, "We know that you are one of them. We can tell because you talk like someone from," gotta scroll,
Oh, you were so close.
"from Galilee." Peter began to curse and swear, "I don't know the man." Then the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered that Jesus said, "Before the rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you don't know me." Then Peter went out and cried hard. So it took me a while to find a translation that I liked. I'm really picky about word choices. I'm not a huge fan of how this one says "cried hard."
He cried hard, threw a temper tantrum.
Through a tantrum. So I'm not the end phrase there I'm not a huge fan of, but the rest I think makes it a little easier to understand.
Mm-hmm. And the other translations, it's wept bitterly, right?
Wept bitterly, yeah. And I originally
That's
thought,
interesting.
so my first thought was like, oh, the Jesus wept passage, right? I was like, I wonder if it's the same word. Looked it up in Greek, did a couple Google searches. It's not the same word. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but it's not the exact same.
Is it one of those words that doesn't have like a full proper translation?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you Googled more.
No, I didn't go that deep. I was just curious
Okay.
to see if there was a correlation.
Oh,
If
the
it was
same word
Same word.
across. Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Because I don't know, because it's like Peter realizing that like he's weeping his lost friend Jesus, right? So much
Yeah.
more than a friend, but also then like Jesus in the Jesus wept passage is like after he finds out that Lazarus had died. then he goes out and
Interesting.
weeps,
Is
right?
it
So
the
I was like-
same? I see.
So my first thought was like, oh, is it the same word? But it's very similar, but it's not. So sad. That
You
was a
tried.
nice point, but you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
So like that's a really weird passage to enjoy, right? I mean,
knowing you, it's not weird.
no, valid. I'm weird, so I like weird things. But yeah, it's like, of course, there's like a precursor, right, where Peter goes to Jesus. Like Jesus tells him, like, you will all deny me, talking to all the disciples. And Peter goes like, no, Jesus. Like, I got you. Don't worry. They all might. Not me, right? And then Jesus kind of goes like, well, Peter, I'm sorry, bro. Like, and tells him like, you'll deny me 3 times before the rooster crows.
Which, like, if someone said that to me, I'd be like immediately on the defensive. Like,
Right.
Are you serious? Like,
Right. And like, Peter does something along those lines.
yeah.
But then, like, I think that's the moment, right? Right then, a rooster crowed, right? Peter remembered that Jesus sent him and remembered exactly what all this was, right? And, like, imagine that, like, that moment of, like, pure defeat, but also, like, okay, Jesus, you were right. I'll give it to you. You got me, right? But, like, it's so much more than that. It wasn't like a shrug moment. Like,
Right.
He realized, like, the magnitude of what he had done, but also, like, one more point to prove. So like there's another whole layer to this, right? This is a very dense passage. So like a very interesting point that I'm going to get back on, but I kind of want to, plant the seed and then we'll go from there. But the writer, right? So this is in all 4 gospels, which I didn't know. I was wrong. I thought it was only in 2, but it's in 4. The writers of all 4 of those kind of escalate how Peter's responses are, right? So his first response is, I don't know what you're talking about. Second response is, I don't know the man. And the third response, like, overreacts and like swears curses on himself, saying, like, if I'm lying, like, you can curse me. Right? Like, I swear on my mother's grave. that
Like he
I
doubles
don't know
down.
the man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then triples down.
Right. And so, like, there's this escalation of response. Right.
Yep.
And it gets more and more dramatic as time goes, which is so interesting that, and like justifiable too. Like, imagine the frustration of him going like, I don't know him, right?
Right.
And so we'll kind of get back into that point, but just kind of wanted to get you started on that. But this point of like denial, right? The title is called Peter's Denial. Like that's the passage. And like it's easy to think of denial as something of like, oh, I don't know the man. But it's so much more than that, right? It's crazy. And like Chris and I were trying to figure out like examples of ways of denying, and they're so broad because there's so many.
Right.
And like I found this interesting article, and there was like a bunch of points that I was like, ooh, those are kind of touchy. Don't really want to get into those. Or like, I'm like, there's like my human half of me is like, do I really agree with that?
Right.
Right. Human half.
Human half.
What's the other half?
I don't know. Nothing to see here, folks.
Furry?
Whoa.
It was a good time. You gave me enough to scroll there.
Yikes.
Yeah, bruh. So some examples that we came up with and also read in various articles was any direct disobeyment of a commandment of any type. So if you lie, right, in a way you are denying God, right? Which is kind of weird because you're like, oh, like if I tell Chris, I don't know, I'm gonna make fun of your shoes for a second. I like them, but I'm gonna say I was lying.
Do you like my shoes?
We'll figure it out. But
Wait, I don't know if you're lying or not.
no, I like that.
Oh, thanks.
So you're saying
Anyways, if I was to lie about that, Chris, not saying anything. If I was to lie about that, right? This is a bad example, but in a way, I'm saying like, oh God, but like, I know better because I know Chris doesn't want to know that.
Right, right.
so
Like
usurping.
Right.
Like I would cause more harm by being
Right.
truthful than
And like that's a poor example, of course. But like any discretion of any commandment. Yeah. I mean, stealing, right? That's a pretty easy one. Should have gone with that one.
If you stole my shoes.
Right. If I stole your shoes that I lied about liking.
Oh.
Wait, wow, whoa!
I don't know anymore.
This is so. Oh, my heart. Oh,
So it's an emotional shoe.
this
roller
is
coaster.
not what I expected. Oh my gosh.
So I'm denying God by going like, oh, well, I need this more than that person does, or more than the grace you gift them with, right? With that, anyways. But so we're like kind of going around God, going like, oh, well, like I'm greater than you, in kind of like a small way. And like idolatry is a really big way of denying God.
Hmm.
Like
Mm.
that's a pretty simple one.
Yeah.
Like
Because at that point, you're like denying God's.
omnipotence.
That's actually the word I was about to say. That's weird. Yeah. Or like you're even denying that, like, yeah, he's the one or the only, like, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, like you're straight up denying him.
So yeah, I mean, any commandment. This interesting point was like leveling Jesus to like a human figure. In a way, is denying God. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like,
Ooh, I just read a lot of theology about that today.
I think we could all be like, oh, clearly, like Jesus, Son of God. Okay, like it's hard to grasp, but like I like understand it at like a level. But then like there's times where I'm like, maybe not like consciously going like, oh, Jesus was a human, but he was also kind of a human. Right?
Yeah.
Like, taking away his power.
You like
right?
try to relate him to
Right.
yourself so much, yeah, that you forget.
Right, you
the
take
divine
away
nature.
that, right,
Mhm.
divine nature. Thank you. So like I was like, oh, that's so interesting, but like in a way, you're denying his power, right?
Yeah.
And so then like the kind of the overall bracket one is like any wrongdoing or transgression, in a way, is denying God, and that's kind of similar to the first one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, lying about your shoes, stealing shoes.
Mhm. Anything having to do with shoes, really.
Yeah, you're just denying God via
Yeah.
shoes.
Let's get some shoe.
Such an old video.
I'm glad you knew what it was, because
I-
otherwise that was going to go nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Shows.
So yeah, it's not always this like verbal confrontation of denial. Where it's not always like the phrase "I don't know the man," right? Of like, oh, your friend asks you, "Are you Christian?" You go like, "No, I'm not one of them," right?
The disassociation.
Right.
Right.
So like that's a very easy way to look at it, but it is so much more, right? All your actions and deeds, in a way, right? Because we're imperfect.
Mhm.
I scheduled it.
Oh, okay, interesting. We just got a pop-up notification from our
YouTube.
podcast. I was very confused. I was like, what's going on here? But yeah, so like any type of most decisions we make in life, most things we do in life, in our imperfect manner, in a way, are denying God.
Mhm.
And like that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And especially with this Titus verse, right? So I was looking for another verse to kind of like fit in with this denying lens over the Matthew passage. Because there's so many other ways to look at that Matthew passage.
Mhm.
Grace and, like how our shortcomings in life and like peer pressure and a whole other list of things you could look at it from. And like this is a very odd angle, I will admit.
Is it? I actually
think
didn't
so.
read the Titus passage, so I'm curious.
Oh,
See
I
what
read
the
it to you
angle
though,
is.
so it's
What's
good.
the
Did
Titus
you?
passage?
Yeah. So the Titus passage, right? They claim to know God,
right.
but by their actions they deny him. They are detestable, disobedient, and unfit for doing good.
That is a harsh verse.
I remember
Yeah.
that now.
Yes, I think it is very harsh in a lot of ways. I think the next line I wrote is like, dang. Like, so harsh, but true in a lot of ways. And how the first point that I thought of was how we as humans can do nothing without God. Like, detestable, disobedient, and unfit to do good. Right?
Unfit for doing anything
Anything
good.
good.
Like, yeesh.
So, like, we are dust, right?
Yeah.
Yet by grace and by mercy and so many other things,
Yeah.
we are allowed the opportunity to deny him,
Mhm.
which is such a bizarre thought.
I know, right? Like,
And like, there's a bunch of layers there that I don't want to get into, but like, through him, we're allowed to like be here, be present,
yeah.
and do things.
And have
Right.
the ability to deny
have
him.
the ability to
Like,
deny him.
Somehow. Yeah.
Which
It can be mind boggling.
it can be. It is my.
It is, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I understand. If
yeah.
you only got it, Tyler. Any luck on Titus?
It's in reference to the when he visited Crete in Greece.
Mhm.
From what it sounds like, it's talking about what's the word? False teachers. Because this is like the time where it's like Paul describes false teachers as rebellious, empty talkers who claim to teach the law without understanding, and deceivers who deliberately lead the faith astray. So those who like have the facade of being a teacher or being a leader, but then using it to their advantage for bad.
Gotcha.
Which I think is a fitting context.
Mhm. Big time.
False teachers,
Hmm.
right? In a way, Peter's not a false teacher, but like he's still saying he doesn't know the man.
Right.
Mhm.
And he's one of the 12,
Right.
who's been following Jesus around.
One of the close three.
Mhm.
It goes to show you regardless of your position, regardless of who you are, how solid you may think you are, you will always trip up. You will always fall at some point in your life, right?
Yeah. And that's a whole nother level to that
Mhm.
passage. Right. Like, and as I said before many times now, this is as is most Bible passages, right? As are most Bible passages. You can look at them from a variety of angles.
Mm.
And yeah, grace, or like
Yeah.
how weak we are as humans, right? Like
Yeah.
a servant girl approaches Peter, and he goes like, "Oh, I don't know the man,"
Mhm.
right? Like there's no level of like physical intimidation,
Right.
Mm.
yet he still chooses to deny him.
It's also a passage that has a conclusion, because this passage introduces the situation that Peter carries, but then you fast forward to the end of the book.
It's in John, but yes,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We were discussing
Yeah.
whether or not you wanted to include this.
yeah. So I was purposely avoiding that because
Oh,
it is
my
a
bad.
lot. It's okay. But yeah, so later on in John 21, 14, I'm going to misquote it. John 21, somewhere in there.
It's a lot of verses.
Right after they, get off the boat, Jesus makes them some eggs and some breakfast,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Um,
whoa. I wonder if
I don't know if
Jesus-
he made eggs, but he made some breakfast.
I wasn't there.
He could have.
But anyways, so Peter comes back to Jesus, and Jesus asks him 3 times, right? Do you
Yeah.
love me, right? And after every time he tells him, like, feed my sheep, take care of my lambs, right? And like telling Peter,
Mhm.
like, basically you're back in.
Yeah.
You are the disciple still, you are Peter, opposed to Simon. And so like there's that level of grace, like,
Yeah.
and how even though he denied him, even though he is detestable, unfit to do anything good, Jesus still chooses to come back to him,
Mm.
still chooses to ask him 3 times if he loves him, right? Still tells him to take care of his lambs and feed his sheep.
That's insane.
So back to the point I kind of touched on earlier, so the 2 takeaways I want from this are the fact of deniability, right? How most actions and things we do, right, deny God in some way, right?
Mhm.
Even if we do, quote, good things, a lot of times we have malicious intents.
Right. What was it? Works without faith.
Right.
Because we always talk about faith without works
Mhm.
and the quote unquote controversy, or like that could be misunderstood.
Right.
But then, yeah, like works without faith.
That's just work. I
Right.
think I did a hub teaching on that passage.
Really? Did you use the word pharisectomy?
Sadly, I did not. I was not brave enough or
It's like,
innovative
it's
enough.
like the second time this thing's come up in podcasts. I'm done.
We definitely referenced that.
We did.
Yeah, that's the second
Yeah.
time. Take that as a compliment, Greg, if you listen to this.
Oof.
I like the sermon.
That's true.
I'm not being sarcastic.
no.
I liked it.
Yeah.
You're not lying, so you
Right?
can't
Yeah.
deny.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow, you're not lying, so you can't deny. I like that. Well done. Take the
Anyways,
compliment.
I don't know how to
Gosh.
respond to that. But so the first point, right, is how easy it is to deny. And the second point that I touched on earlier was like the progression of Peter
Mm.
and how he didn't start out going like, "Curse me if I'm lying." How it was a step, it was a process,
Mhm.
right? It was a drastic escalation.
Mhm.
He didn't start out at a 10. You know?
Right.
Like he like was like, oh, I don't know what are you talking about, right?
Hmm.
And how that is so easy to do in life,
Oh yeah.
where like we will lie to ourselves in a lot of ways, going like, oh well, but like I just don't really know what's going on,
Hmm.
right? Or like, you know, I'm not like full blown,
Yeah.
out of control.
It's like if you think of like somebody who's having like an affair in their marriage, it doesn't
Right.
usually start off with like sleeping together. It's like a little bit of flirting or like a little bit of this behind the back, that kind of thing, you know, and
Right.
it just builds up. And next thing you know, you're knee deep.
Right. And so I think it like is crucial that the writers, and it happened this way, and I think that that's a good reason why, is because everything in life is a progression.
Hmm.
And the writers make a point of that. And that is something I never noticed until I was reading it today, and I was like, oh wow. Interesting.
Mm.
He doesn't say the same thing every time. He doesn't go like, I don't know the man. I don't know the man. I don't know the man. No. He escalates drastically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He blows
To
up
like
at the
an
end,
insane
yeah.
level. And how easy it was to get away with that.
It was in quick succession as well.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know how much time went
Yeah,
by.
that's
But
true.
yeah, I mean,
But it was definitely the same night.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no,
I
it
mean,
was the same night. Yeah.
and so like how easy it is to do that process, how fast it happens, but also like at the end, right? Peter realizes what happens.
Mm.
He hears the rooster crow,
Mm. It's like immediate.
right? And he cries hard, bitterly weeps, right? We all get to that point in life, you know,
Yeah.
where we're just at wit's end, right? And maybe it's the weirdest thing that sets it off. Maybe it's the rooster's crow.
Yeah. That's usually how it is for me when I hit that breaking point. It's some
Mhm.
random thing that doesn't even seem correlated to anything else that's going on.
Right.
But it's like, that's it.
Yeah. And so I think if those 2 points could become one, is that it is easy to deny. And it usually starts out in small ways, but then leads to something much bigger
Mm.
and never ends well.
Mm.
Right.
Right.
Peter wasn't like, oh, I messed up. My B. No, he cried hard. He bitterly wept.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
This, which is,
Yeah, man.
I was so confused by this. And like scrapped so much. I had this whole like red light, green light analogy.
I heard
It wasn't.
that.
It was. Be happy I didn't share it. It's you got the good end of things. But yeah, it's like I don't know. Such a meaningful passage, and like I've done hub teachings on this in the past. But yeah, this is something so different,
Mm.
Yeah.
and,
It's
and
so
like
good.
some of it's life stage, right?
Yeah.
Like I taught about this when I was 16, right? Which isn't that long ago.
No, but you are almost 20.
I'm almost
Whoa.
20. And like I taught about like the grace
Mm.
and like how I would have done the same thing if I was in Peter's shoes,
Mm.
right? And that is still true to this day,
Mm.
like
For sure, yeah.
undoubtedly. Yet I chose today to focus on like the act of denial.
Mm.
Why? Well, maybe I'm denying some things in my life, but yeah, I don't know. So I guess yeah, one last point would be just like look at passages differently.
Mhm.
Mm.
There's so much life
There's
in
so
the word.
much.
Mm.
It's so
Um,
good.
Yeah, and like don't always be like, okay, how can I look at this passage differently? Like,
Right.
just read it again,
Mm.
and you'll be like, wait, whoa, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no Bible scholar. Quite the opposite, actually.
Mm.
I just, yeah. So I think like that's the main purpose of why we're doing this
Mhm.
is to share a little bit about ourselves, what is meaningful for us, but also like how these passages have affected
Mm.
us in so many ways.
Mhm.
This passage has definitely been a huge part of my life, my walk, right?
Mm.
And I don't know what either you're going to share, but I'm excited
Mm.
to see what happens. So yeah, I guess I'm going to wrap us up.
Nice work.
yeah, thanks for coming out tonight, guys. It's probably not tonight when you're listening to this, but that's fine. Maybe not. Maybe it is. Who knows? I hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast. Yeah. So check out my favorite passage, Matthew 26, 69 through 75.
Or you can find it in any of the other 3 gospels.
Or you can find it in any of the other 3 gospels. I just like the Matthew one a little more. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, guys. We'll hopefully be on the podcast app soon. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. All right, guys. Have a nice night. Have a good one. We out.